Donald Trump was tough standing up to Xi Jinping. Really? He totally folded to Xi Jinping during COVID, did nothing to try to push back on him at all. Donald Trump really behind the scenes cares about what the right things to do are, that he's a listener, that he listens to people. Like, this is just ridiculous. We all know him, that his biggest flaw is that he's a perfectionist. I mean, do you read his bleats? He doesn't even spell things correctly. But the most important thing I want to pick on is that little exchange you had about, oh, it's so surprising they've never met. Do you know why Trump and Kamala Harris have never met, Piers? Have you thought about it for a second? Do you know why they really haven't met?
Tell me.
Brace yourself, because in this video, Tim Miller absolutely shreds Piers Morgan in a fiery debate over Donald Trump's presidency. Piers, ever the loyal Trump defender, tries to sell the idea that Trump was some meticulous, thoughtful leader who carefully listened to his advisors. But Tim? Oh, he's not buying it for a second. He lays it all out. Trump couldn't even proofread his own tweets, let alone make strategic decisions. And when Piers brings up the so-called shock that Trump never met Kamala Harris, Tim flips it right back, exposing the real reason. Trump was never serious about governing in the first place. This exchange gets heated fast, so let's dive in and watch Tim Miller school Piers Morgan on Trump's presidency.
Because he was a toddler, and he threw a temper tantrum after he lost a fair election. And for the first time in America since the Civil War, we did not have a peaceful transfer of power. We did not have a ceremonial transfer of power where the former president, like a man, goes and stands on the stage and greets the next incoming president, where he helps the incoming team with the transition, where the vice president's team meets with the other. That didn't happen last time because Donald Trump attempted a coup and he had a temper tantrum and he flew home to Mar-a-Lago just to go golfing,
all of which,
and to hang out with the Cougars on the pool deck.
To be clear, all of which
that's what happened. That's why they haven't met, because he tried a coup.
Well, to be clear, at the time I heavily criticised him for all the things you've just said, but that doesn't explain why.
Okay, sure, but Corey Lewandowski comes on your show and he's like, "Oh, Donald Trump and Kamala haven't met."
Well, hang on.
Oh my goodness, wow, that's so interesting. They haven't met, and then Corey's over there saying it's because Kamala was ineffective as a senator. No, it's because Donald Trump was supposed to be a deal maker, didn't meet with any of the Democratic senators. He said he was going to be the art of the deal man, but he didn't try to actually do any deals. All he did was insult people on Twitter, and then after he lost to Kamala Harris fair and square and Joe Biden, he didn't have the dignity to have a transfer of power for the first time in American history.
I've just said I agree.
Shameful.
I've just said
embarrassing. He's an embarrassment.
I've just said I agree with you. So let's park that to one side.
Well, but you didn't say it to Corey. You didn't challenge Corey. It was a very chummy interview. I know you want to get Trump on the show, but it was very chummy.
Okay.
And you didn't challenge Corey that much.
Ours can be chummy too. I don't think I've been unchummy to you. I don't even know you. I've known Corey.
No, we can be chummy.
I've known Corey. I've known Corey a long time.
Somebody that's a close advisor to Donald Trump on the podcast, you think that you could challenge him a little bit. That's all.
I was just going to ask you this question. The point that he made, Corey Lewandowski, was it was surprising to him they'd never met, given that Trump was president for 4 years before the transfer of power, January 6th issues that you're talking about. Why was Kamala Harris, who's one of the 100 senators in the United States at the time, why was she incapable of being able to get into a room with Donald Trump, the president?
How was she not invited? Why did the president not invite her to the White House?
Why didn't she make herself
Donald
invited?
Trump ran.
Isn't that the job of senators?
Come on. Donald Trump ran on this BS nonsense and come on this show. I'm the art of the deal man. I'm a deal maker, which was a book he didn't even write that got ghostwritten. It was this fake persona. It was this Hollywood persona that he conned the American people into believing that he was some deal maker. Then he gets in the White House and he doesn't even try to work with the Democrats on a deal. All he does is insult them. He does nicknames. He trashes them. He didn't cut any deals. Donald Trump, Joe Biden ended up being the deal maker that got the bipartisan deal on gay marriage, on infrastructure. That's why Kamala didn't go to the White House. He didn't ever invite her. How about that?
Well, yeah, I would
try that.
If I was a senator, I'd have made sure I got invited.
Real quick, if you're enjoying this video, take a second to smash that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel a ton. Alright, back to the chaos. Tim Miller is tearing into Trump's presidency and he's not pulling punches. He exposes how Trump's refusal to accept his loss led to a failed coup attempt, breaking a 220-year-old American tradition, the peaceful transfer of power. No handshake, no meeting, just Trump sulking off to Mar-a-Lago like a sore loser. And let's set the record straight. Trump and Kamala Harris never met, not because she was ineffective like his allies love to claim, but because Trump didn't care about governing. The so-called deal maker never even attempted to make deals. And Kamala, he never invited her, period.
Story.
But let me ask you, I'm curious about your own journey. You were Jeb Bush's guy, Republican, and now you're a Democrat. How does that happen?
Well, I'm not a Democrat. I left the party in 2020. Very good timing, I thought. In about November of 2020, after the election, I was hopeful. Throughout 2020, I was hopeful that we could get our party back from Donald Trump and get back to a more classical, liberal, traditional party that had a respect for the rule of law, that had a respect for our allies abroad, international relationships, that had a respect for immigration and the immigrant story and how that's an important part of America. I was hoping we could get back to that kind of compassionate conservatism after 2020. And then what happened was Donald Trump lost. And he threw an extended temper tantrum. And rather than standing up to him, rather than telling him, sir, Mr. President, it's time for you to accept your loss and move on, all of the Republicans basically went along with it. And everybody participated in this absurd lie, in this absurd fantasy where every Republican was like, yeah, we're worried about the voting machines. And I was so disheartened and discouraged by that I wrote an article saying I was leaving the party. It ended up being totally correct. Over the next 5 years, that now everyone who spoke out against Trump, like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, has been thrust out of the party, and people who are like embarrassing clowns are made to be the nominee of our party, and like Mark Robinson in North Carolina or Kari Lake in Arizona, simply because they're willing to suck up to Donald Trump. It's not a traditional conservative or a classically liberal party anymore. It's an embarrassment. It's a cult of one man, and I'm very happy to leave it. And I think everything that's happened over the last 5 years has validated all of my criticisms of the party.
Tim didn't leave the Republican Party because he suddenly became a Democrat. Nope, he left because the party stopped being about real conservative values and morphed into a full-blown personality cult for Trump. And let's be real, he was 100% right. After 2020, Trump didn't take his loss like every other president in history. Instead, he threw a massive tantrum, spun wild election fraud conspiracies, and the entire Republican Party fell in line like blind followers. And let's not even get started on January 6th. Trump's refusal to accept reality led to chaos at the Capitol, breaking a tradition that had stood to him for over 220 years. No peaceful transfer of power, no transition, just Trump sulking off to Mar-a-Lago while his supporters stormed the Capitol. That's not strength, that's pure cowardice. At the end of the day, this debate proved one thing: the pro-Trump defense is paper thin. Tim came armed with facts, logic, and actual conservative principles, while Piers, he fumbled through weak arguments, trying to defend a man who built his entire career on lies and self-interest. And when the heat turned up, Piers just couldn't keep up. But hey, that's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below.